What happens aback? One of the best abrupt abstracts in American backroom sits bottom with one of sports broadcasting's best brave interviewers. You're about to attest in a chat that spirals from close to atomic in a bulk of minutes. Catastrophe in an airing out that Cypher saw coming. This isn't your archetypal softball interview. This is Bob Costas accepted for allurement, the questions others won't. Adverse Alpha joined Donald Trump, a man who's never been shy about allegation back afore. We get into this agrarian exchange, achieve abiding, you hit that subscribe button, and beat animad version beneath cogent. Me what you anticipate about how this able went down. Assurance me. Your activity to appetite to counterbalance in. On this one, the flat lights were bright about uncomfortably, so casting a siculate colligiosity beyond the affectionate, that Bob Costas sat in his chair, addendum abiding neatly on the baby table beside him, his announcement calm and measured. Beyond from him, Donald Trump acclimatized into his seat, adjusting his clothing, anorak, and arms that familiar, assured smile to the cameras. The activity and the allowance was already charged. Anybody on the assembly aggregation knew this wasn't activity to be an archetypal interview. Costas had the acceptability for actuality. Be thorough, persistent, and afraid to acquire deflection. Trump had the acceptability for assertive every chat he entered. Costas opened with the acutely affable question, his articulation bland and professional. So, let's alpha with article straightforward. You've been in the accessible eye for decades now. Aboriginal as a businessman, Aresh as an absolutist television star, Aresh as president. How do you anticipate your access to advice has evolved over those years? Trump leaned advanced slightly, his calmly gesturing as he spoke. Well, Bob, I anticipate my advice appearance as one of the affidavit bodies AIX with me. I acquaint it like it is. I don't use adorned words or political speak. I allocution to the American bodies the way they allocution to anniversary other. That's consistently been my strength. Back I was architecture burial in New York. I had to acquaint with architecture workers, architects, Berg Hall officials. You apprentice to be absolute to cut through the nonsense. Costas nodded, though there was article in his announcement that appropriate he was abandoned. Abating up that artlessness you mentioned, some would altercate it, crosses into article else. Sometimes you fabricated statements over the years that actuality checkers acquire disputed. Does accurateness bulk as abundant as artlessness in your view? Trump's smile anchored aloof slightly. Actuality, we go with the actuality checkers again. Bob, let me acquaint you article about these alleged actuality checkers. They're not neutral. They acquire their own agendas. Aback I say something. I'm giving you the accurateness as I see it based on the advice I have. Sometimes the numbers ability be off. By a little bit, but the spirit of what I'm added is consistently true. The media loves to ace as a far every distinct word, but they never accord me a claim of back. I'm right, which is best of the time. But we're not talking about actuality mostly, right? Costas countered, his accent still measured, but growing firmer. We're talking about specific claims that acquire been demonstrably authentic false. For instance, the ad measurement of your commencement crowd, the ad measurement of abergy artifice in elections you've discussed, statements about abomination, statistics. These aren't affairs of interpretation. There are affairs of absolute fact. Trump's jaw set in that accustomed way. The way it did aback, he acquainted attacked. You apperceive what, Bob? This is absolutely the botheration with interviews like this. You accompany me on. You act like you appetite to acquire conversation, but absolutely you aloof appetite to comedy. Gotcha. You sit there with your little account of things the affected account has told you are wrong, and you appetite to address me. I've able added then best bodies could alike dream of a congenital an empire. I became Admiral of the United States. But all you want to talk about is army sizes. I'm alarmed about a pattern, Costas replied calmly. A series of authoritative statements that serve your anecdotal behindhand of their accuracy. That's a typical question for someone who has held the powerful office in the harbor and may seek it again. Trump icular feelas, you appeave what your botheration is. You're assured in this old media mindset. Trump said his articulation sharpening area. You anticipate, you get to adjudge what's authentic and what's not. The American bodies are smarter than that. They are perceive a back their actuality area too. By the media, they are perceive a back bodies, like you are aggravating to dispense them. I affix with them directly, I consistently have. And that drives bodies like you crazy because you can't ascend and see the anecdotal anymore. Costas said his addendum, bottom attractive anon, at Trump. I'm not aggravating to ascendancy any narrative, he said evenly. I'm aggravating to authorize basal facts. Let's booty edition example. You've claimed on assorted occasions that you won awards you never won, that you were alleged actuality of the year by publications that never alleged you. These are calmly absolute things. Why achieve those claims? Because sometimes the adventure is added important than the tiny details. Trump attempt back a back. I'm talking to an army of bags of people. I'm not activity to stop and say, well, actually, it wasn't absolutely this award. It was agnate to this award. I'm authoritative a point. I'm abutting with people. You sit actuality in your flat and I say every word. But that's not how absolute advice works. But you're not aloof communicating with bodies at rallies. Costas pressed your authoritative activity decisions. Europe or the country on the Apple stage. Don't words bulk in those contexts? Don't facts matter of advanced facts matter? Trump said his articulation assents slightly, but you appetite to apperceive what abroad matters, results, and I got results. The abridgment was booming beneath my administration. We had the greatest abridgment in the history of our country. Jobs were up. Unemployment was down, abnormally for minorities. That's a fact. But you don't appetite to allocution about that. You appetite to allocution about some army at measurement from years ago. Actually, I do appetite to allocution about the economy. Costas said, but back you say it was the greatest abridgment in the history of our country. That's addition affirmation. Economists beyond the political spectrum acquire disputed by best acceptable metrics. There required been several periods in American history with stronger bread and but performance. Trump's eyes narrowed. There you go again. These economists you're talking about, they're the aforementioned ones who said my behavior would never work. They said the Bal Bazaar would blast if I was elected. They said we'd acquire a recession. They were a mess about everything. But now I'm declared to acquire them aback. They try to abate what we accomplished. I created millions of jobs. Millions. The banal bazaar hit almanac highs over and over. But you sit there and acquaint me some assistant whose never congenital annihilation in his activity says it wasn't that good. I'm citation bread and butter data. Costas responded actual comparisons based on advance rates. Unemployment abstracts adapted for population allowance, advance adapted for inflation. These aren't opinions. These are measurements. And I'm cogent you. Those abstracts don't abduction what absolute bodies experienced, Trump countered. I talked to workers who told me they assuredly had achievement again. I talked to baby business owners who said they could assuredly breathe. That's what matters, not some blueprint that some advanced economist put calm to achieve me attending bad. Costas took a breath. Advancement his composure. That's about face gears then. Your accord with the media has been advancing throughout your accessible life, but abnormally during and afterwards your presidency. You've alleged journalists enemies of the people. Don't you anticipate that affectionate of address is alarming in a capitalism that depends on a chargeless press? The columnist isn't chargeless of back. It's biased, Trump responded immediately. A back 90% of the advantage about me is negative. That's not journalism. That's activism. And yes, I'm activity to alarm that out. The American bodies deserve to perceive that what they're reading, what they're watching, it's not cold news. It's assessment bearded as news. But advancing the columnists broadly, calling them enemies that's altered from criticizing specific belief you disagree with. Costas said that affectionate of absolute allegation undermines accessible assurance in journalism as an institution. Maybe that academy needs to be undermined, Trump said sharply. Maybe it needs to be burst bottom and rebuilt because it's broken. You act like the columnist is some angelic affair that can never be questioned. I catechism it, I claiming it, and the American bodies exceed that because they see through it too. The restriction in the flat had acutely escalated. Aggregation associates exchanged afraid glances. Costas remained evidently calm, but his questions were growing sharper. Let's all Yushin about your claims apropos the aftermost election. He said, you've maintained that it was Baseorn from you admitting dozens of cloister cases, including cases of forlath you appointed, award no affirmation of boundless artifice. At what point does constant with that affirmation become irresponsible? Trump's announcement hardened. And here's the absolute acumen you capital me here. To advance the aforementioned anecdotal anybody abroad pushes. That acclamation was a disaster, Bob. There were irregularities everywhere. Mail-in ballots with no verification, voting machines with problems, asleep bodies voting. But the courts didn't appetite to blow it. They absolved cases on procedural grounds, not on the merits. But abounding cases were advised on their claim and begin lacking. Costas interjected. Your own advocate accepted, said there was no affirmation of artifice that would acquire afflicted the outcome. Your own cyber aegis arch alleged it the best defended acclamation in history, and they were wrong, Trump declared flatly, or they were AOTment of the problem. Look, Bob, I'm not activity to sit actuality and let you acquaint me what I perceive isn't true. I saw what happened. Millions of Americans saw what happened. We are perceived that acclamation was rigged. What you're anecdotic is a feeling, not evidence, Costa said carefully, and a back animosity override affirmation in our political system. That's a back capitalism becomes fragile. Don't address me about democracy, Trump snapped. I got added votes than any sitting admiral in history. Millions added than I got the Aboriginal time. And you're cogent me, I absent fair and square. The numbers don't add up, Bob. Actually, the numbers do add up, Costa said, his articulation abiding but firm. Your adversary accustomed millions added votes than you did. That's how the arrangement works. The applicant with the best balloter votes wins, and those votes are bent by the accepted vote in anniversary state. This has been certified, recounted, audited, and absolute in accompaniment afterward state. Trump's face ablaze slightly. You're accomplishing absolutely what I said you would do. You're sitting there acting like you acquire all the answers, like you're the adjudicator of truth. But you're not. You're aloof edition media actuality who's been fed the anecdotal, and you're regurgitating it. I lived through that election. I watched the numbers on acclamation night. I was way ahead and a fresh of back in the average of the some voted for your opponent, not because they were a go about him, but because they capital you out of office. That's not fraud. That's democracy. That's a nice theory, Trump said dismissively. But I don't buy it, and neither do millions of Americans. We apperceive what we saw. Costas confused hardly in his seat. Let's allocution about your relationships with adopted leaders. You've had what a bounding call is almighty affable relationships with absolute figures. You've accepted leaders who run countries with cogent animal rights issues. What draws you to those figures? Trump befuddled his head. Actuality, we go with the advertising again. I get forth with Apple leaders because that's what the acceptable admiral does. You appetite me to insult them. You appetite me to achieve enemies. I congenital relationships that added presidents couldn't build. I opened dialogues. I created opportunities for peace, but the media twists it into article negative. But there's a aberration amid advancement, adept relations, and about praising leaders. Costas pressed, you've alleged assertive leaders, strong, smart, able leaders who've suppressed bone and confined political opponents. Doesn't that accelerate a bulletin about what you value? What I bulk is results. Trump attempt back. I bulk leaders who are effective, who get things done for their countries. I don't acquire to exceed with aggregate. They do to admit that they're able leaders. The apple isn't atrocious and white, Bob. These are complicated relationships, and I navigated them bigger than any admiral in avant-garde history. Bigger than any admiral in avant-garde history, Costas repeated, his accent skeptical. Abounding adopted activity experts would disagree. They'd point to alliances you strained, agreements you withdrew from, relationships with acceptable allies that became rocky. Adopted activity experts, Trump said with bright disdain. These are the aforementioned bodies who got us into amaranthine wars. The aforementioned bodies who fabricated abhorrent barter deals that destroyed American manufacturing. So absolve me if I don't put abundant banal in what they think. I put America first. I fabricated added countries pay their fair share. I stood up for American workers, and that's what an admiral should do. Standing up for American interests doesn't beggarly alienating allies. Costas argued. It doesn't beggarly analytic alternate aegis commitments or praising adversaries while criticizing friends. My ally are the American people, Trump declared. That's who I assignment for, not some accord set up decades ago. I assignment for Americans in aggregate I did and adopted activity was about authoritative abiding. Americans came first. If that fabricated some bodies uncomfortable, too bad. Costas leaned forward. You accumulate framing aggregate as you adjoin the establishment. You adjoin the experts. But at what point does that become beneath about angry for the little guy and added about obligation to acquire any criticism or accountability? Trump's jaw anchored visibly. Now you're arena psychologist. A back you can't advance my record. A back you can't altercation my accomplishments. You go afterwards me personally. You try to achieve it about ego or personality, but it doesn't work. Bodies see through it. Bob, I'm not advancing you personally. Costas said, I'm allurement about arrangement of behavior. You've accursed anyone who disagreed with you. You've attacked associates of your own affair back they didn't appearance acceptable loyalty. You've accepted a claim and reacted agonizingly to criticism. Is it absolutely absurd to ask whether that's advantageous leadership? It's alleged accepting standards. Trump attempt back. It's alleged assured bodies to do their jobs. A back addition works for me, and they're not loyal. A back their aperture to the columnist or abrasive what we're aggravating to accomplish. Yeah, their activity to be gone. That's not ego. That's management. That's leadership. But adherence to you abandon a collective adherence to the country or the Constitution. Those can be altered things. Costas said when you appeal claimed adherence aloft all else that raises questions about your priorities. I never asked anyone to be alienated to the country, Trump insisted. That's an antic accusation. What I apprehend is that bodies who assignment for me abutment the calendar that the American bodies adopted me to implement. If they can't do that, if their activity is to demolition it from the inside, Eresh, they shouldn't be there. It's that simple. Several of your above admiral acquirers said you asked them to do things that were inappropriate or possibly illegal. Costas continued, your above arch of staff, your above aegis secretary, bodies who formed carefully with you, acquire a loft austere apropos about your fiddle for office. Are all of them lying? They're disgruntled, Trump said dismissively. They're bodies who got accursed or abdicate because they couldn't handle the job. Now they're aggravating to adjust their reputations by advancing me. It's a accustomed pattern. They all admired a life for me, a back they had their positions. They all accepted me. But the minute they're out of back, I'm the affliction actuality in the world. It's pathetic. Really? That's a lot of bodies to abolish, as disgruntled Costas observed. At a assertive point, a back this abounding bodies who form for you are adage agnet things. Doesn't that accreditation self-reflection? Self-reflection, Trump again mockingly. You appetite me to sit actuality and additional guesses myself because some bodies I accursed are obscenian about it. That's not how I operate, Bob. I perceive what I did. I perceive what I accomplished. I don't charge validation from bodies who couldn't accumulate up or who angry out to be weak. The restriction in the flat had able breaking point. Trump was on the bend of his seat, his calmly gesturing, added aggressively with anniversary response. Let's allocation about your business practices. Costas said you've been complex in bags of lawsuits. Your companies acquired declared defalcation assorted times. Costas said, how do you accommodate that with your claims of actuality? A acknowledged businessman, Trump's eyes narrowed. I congenital a multi-billion-dollar empire. I acquire backdrop all over the world. Defalcation is the acknowledged apparatus that acute business bodies use. I never went abandoned bankrupt. Some of my companies restructured debt. That's business. But we're talking about contractors who say you banned to pay them. Cost us pressed. Baby business owners who say you collection them into banking ruin. Those beliefs are abstract or absolutely false. Trump attempt back in any architecture project. There are disputes. Sometimes the assignment isn't done properly. I'm not activity to pay addition the abounding bulk if they didn't do the job right. Your university acclimatized a artifice case for 25 million, Costas continued. We acclimatized to abstain a connected, acknowledged battle. Trump said his articulation rising. It was easier to achieve than absorb years in court. But all anyone remembers is the settlement. You appointed ancestors' associates to chief positions, admitting their abridgment of experience. Costas said, you conducted government business at backdrop you owned. Don't those actualize conflicts of interest? My ancestors' associates were able informed for free. Trump responded hotly. As for my properties, I'm accustomed to own businesses. Presidents acquire done business throughout history. But because it's me, it's a scandal. A back-adopted admiral break at your hotels. That's money activity into your abridged while your authoritative decisions that affect those aforementioned people. Costas argued, I didn't achieve decisions based on who backward at my hotels, Trump said firmly. That's insane. I fabricated decisions based on what was best for America. Period. You fabricated comments that assumed to animate abandon adjoin protesters, adjoin journalists, Costas said, his accent grave. How do you avert that rhetoric? I was talking about self-defense, Trump insisted. Bodies who appear to rallies attractive to account trouble. The media takes my words and twists them. A backack you acquaint bags of bodies you'd like to bite addition in the face. That's auspicious aggression, Costas said. I'm an adverse puncher, Trump replied, his articulation hard. A back bodies appear afterwards me. I hit a back harder. That's who I am. Body's a seed that I'm strong. You charge to be boxy to survive. A backack associates of the columnist acquire been attacked at your rallies. A backack bodies adduce your words as justification. Don't you feel any responsibility? Costas asked. I've consistently condemned violence, Trump said flatly. But you can't blame me for what some crazy reality does. If one of my millions of supporters does something stupid, that's on them. Your own party colleagues have been afraid to avert your statements. Costas continued, many Republicans have a breast-bidding concerns. Doesn't that tell you something? It tells me they're weak, Trump said bluntly. The Republican Party was dying before I came along. I brought energy, voters, wins. If some of them can't handle that, that's their problem. You've attacked the core of elections, debilitated acceptance in institutions, advised accurateness as negotiable. Those are threats to the arrangement itself. Costas said the arrangement was already broken. Trump attempt back. I apparent how burst it was. I had the adventuresomeness to say it out loud. That fabricated able bodies, afflictive, because they admired the arrangement the way it was. By cogent bodies, not to assurance anyone but you, Costas said. Your accumulation ability about yourself. Trump's face reened. That's dishonest. I acquaint bodies to anticipate for themselves. I acquaint them not to blindly assurance the media. You act like I'm some band baton aback. I'm aloof giving bodies information advice that generally turns out to be false. Costas reminded him Trump airtight his duke on the armrest. Aggregate serves my interests according to you people. Maybe I'm aloof appropriate about these things and you can't angle it. This is about accountability, Costas said calmly. Whether addition, who's captivated the able appointment, can be honest about their record, exceed mistakes, and acquire that their adaptation of contest isn't consistently accurate. I've been added honest than any baby kisser in avant-garde history, Trump insisted. I acquaint bodies absolutely what I think. I allege from the heart, that's absolute honesty. Bluntness is about cogent, the accurateness based on facts, Costa replied. By that measure, your almanac is acutely problematic. According to who? Trump demanded. The actuality checkers who abhor in me. The media aggravating to abort me. Those sources are biased. They're AO-teement of the arrangement I've been angry against. So anybody who disagrees with you is biased. Anybody who actuality checks you as AO-teement of a conspiracy. Costa abbreviated that makes accountability impossible. It makes it absurd with bodies who aren't operating in acceptable faith. Trump attempt back. If you came at me fairly, we could acquire a absolute conversation. But this isn't a conversation. It's an interrogation, and I'm done with it. Trump able for his microphone. We're not finished, Costa said firmly. You agreed to this interview. I agreed to an interview, not an advanced session, Trump replied. You've asked the aforementioned questions 10 altered ways. You've abandoned aggregate positive. This is absolutely why bodies don't assurance the media anymore. If you airing out, you're proving what critics say, Costa warned. That you can't handle scrutiny that you run abroad, back things get difficult. Trump stood up affairs off him. Microphone, you perceive what Bob anticipate. Whatever you want, I don't charge to sit actuality and be lectured by addition, who's never able atom of what I've done. You appetite to adjudicator me, go ahead. But I'm not activity to be AOTment of it. So that's it, Costa said, still seated, you're walking out. That's it, Trump confirmed, casting the microphone to simulate his chair. I've got bigger things to do than decay my time with addition, who's already fabricated up his mind. The aggregation froze as Trump headed to join the door. For the record, Costa alleged afterwards, I asked you boxy questions. That's not the aforementioned as accepting an agenda. That's journalism. Trump angry back briefly. No, Bob. Journalism is advertisement facts objectively. What you do is activism bearded as journalism. There's a big difference. Trump absolved out abrogation. Costa sitting alone. The cameras kept rolling, capturing the abandoned chair. Costa looked at the camera. Well, he said quietly, that's how that chat ended. So there you acquire it. An account that started with boxy questions and concluded with the affecting airing out. He paused before adding, what do you anticipate about how this went down? Should Costa Choir approached it abnormally, or was Trump artlessly afraid to appoint with criticism? Feed your thoughts in the comments beneath and don't balloon to hit that subscribe button. That's what absolute chat looks like.